nderuar, mirëmbrëma, mirë se erdhët në emisionin Jeta në Kosovë. Sonde do të ndesh një intervistë me Maria Bamieh, ish-prokurore e EULEX-it. Bamieh për herë të parë flet për rastet të dyshimta të privatizimit, kur i hetonte në kohën kur udhëhiqte njësitin e hetimeve financiare në EULEX. Pse ka qëndruar dosja e privatizimit të Fabrikës së Amortizatorëve 2 vjet në sirtarin e Prokurorisë Speciale pa ndërmarrë kurfar mase, deri ku kanë shkuar rastet e Bamieh kundër AKP-së. Çka u bë me hetimin e saj për përpjekjet e ministrave për të dhuruar tokë publike një universiteti privat? A ka të drejtë Bamieh të dëshojë sot se ajo është përjashtuar nga EULEX për shkak të hetimeve të privatizimit që kishte filluar të zhvillojë? Ndeshni në intervistën e kolegës Jeta Xharrën.
Shikues nderuar, mirëmbrëma dhe mirë se vini në Jeta në Kosovë. Me neve është Maria Bamieh, ish-prokurore e EULEX-it, e cila këto ditë është në Prishtinë sepse mbram e ka fitu çmimin për drejtësi prej një organizate që jep çmime për filantropi e quajtur Forumi për Iniciativa Qytetare. Ajo do të na flet më shumë për këtë çmim. Maria, welcome to Kosovo. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
What are you here for? I mean, tell me about the award last night. You won a Justice Award.
Yes, I was really humbled, and I couldn't believe that I had been was going to be given this award. It is for my contribution to justice in Kosovo. I am truly honoured to have received it.
But tell me about the evening. Just, it was very interesting who was there. Who was there while you were receiving this award? It was very particular atmosphere.
It was, I know the president of Kosovo was in attendance, ministers, the dean of the university, and some truly amazing people who are doing fabulous work in Kosovo, really fabulous work with war crimes, rape as a war crime, with autism, with Down syndrome, raising money for schools. There was just some tremendous people there, and I was truly humbled to be amongst them, to be honest, but the award was just amazing.
So,
thank you.
What was the reaction when did you first find out you're going to get the reward? What did you think when you got it?
Well, I couldn't believe it when I got the email to say that I was going to get this award, and my reaction was, what have I done to deserve it? And then when I was with the others who were doing fabulous work with children and disability, things like that.
But you say, I mean, in this corrupt Kosovo, you win an award in a corrupt Kosovo, supposedly in every walk of life. How do you get an award in this kind of environment?
I have no idea, no idea. But not everybody in Kosovo is corrupt, not everyone. The vast majority of people are suffering tremendously because of the drain that corruption is having on the economy of Kosovo, and it is not right.
Finally, you say you are under potential prosecution in Kosovo.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? What are you being chased about?
I don't know the exact details, but I believe that whatever it is, it will lead directly back to EULEX. Even if it is a local prosecution, it will, whatever charges they put against me will be found to go back to EULEX.
But let me put a devil's advocate question to you, because at the same time as you want your issue investigated, there are people who have taken 2 cases up to local prosecutor, whom I've spoken with this morning. I spoke to the head prosecution of Pristina in Kosovo here, and they said they have to address 2 complaints that have come in. One from the Tolaj family, Ilir Tolaj, whose trial you were a prosecutor against, who are charging you with abuse of power, that you revealed private information to the media, and EULEX, who has put up a claim with the local prosecution of Kosovo that you have endangered cases, that you have endangered witnesses when you went out to speak to the media. What do you say to those who say you might have had, even if you had the right as whistleblower to address corruption, you had no right to mention names and details of witnesses, of cases which have been endangered and jeopardized since you last spoke about them?
Well, I say to you that that is not correct, that as a whistleblower and as a prosecutor under European law, I have the right to speak about legal issues and I have the right to speak about cases. And as far as endangering anybody, the only person that I mentioned on that case was Mr. Blatzer and the investigation that was being conducted by Diane Wilson, who I believed at the time was being conducted.
So doesn't the prosecutor have the obligation under your sort of professional code not to speak about cases of their colleagues or their own cases once you leave that case
not
behind?
Not in a case like this, which involved whistleblowing corruption, not in this case. And Mr. Blatzer has spoken in the media about his own issues for years, since 2010.
But what do you say to those who had to evaluate that after what you spoke, that Mr. Blatzer was a witness in another case? As you know, Mr. Blatzer's trials are ongoing. There was Blatzer 1, Blatzer 2, Blatzer 3, but you spoke about a Blatzer 4 case, which the suspects were not aware was happening, while you revealed that case that was happening, and he, since he has his risk of life has been revealed as extremely high since you last spoke about him.
Right. In relation to that, at the time I spoke, that case was going nowhere. They had closed. Rattel had blocked that case. There was no Blatzer 4 case because it had been terminated. It was Blatzer who wrote to Mogherini complaining, and then the case got reopened. Now, at the time I spoke, I didn't know whether the case had been reopened or not. But as far as I was aware, that was closed, a dead case. Finished.
There's 2 more people that have been mentioned that have been jeopardized but by your speaking to the media. Mehmet Pristina, who was intercepted at the time and had not had a case against him, and he was warned by your interviews. That's what is being said by EULEX side. EULEX sources told me that case has been jeopardized, as well as Sekiracha that you're mentioning while you're talking to the media. What do you say to these claims that you have jeopardized investigations?
I don't recall mentioning the Mehmet Pristina case at all.
It was mentioned in the press during your interviews.
I don't recall mentioning that case at all, but if I did, then I did. But I don't recall it and would like to know what I'm alleged to have said in relation to that. In relation to the Sekiracha case, everything was in the media in relation to that case. It was the witnesses in that case who spoke in open court, who talked about the bribes. The case was reported every single day in the media. So I don't see what added value my speaking about that case had on the proceedings. Absolutely none. And at the end of the day, I have my whistleblower rights and my Article 10 rights, which I was exercising. In relation to Mr. Tola, I was aware that he had made complaints. But again, it's exactly the same. All those interceptions that I discussed in the media were in the indictment or read out in open court. They had been published in the media long before I spoke about them in the media myself. They had already been published daily in an account through the trials.
But what do you say to those critics who say you're just continuing to drag dirt into for a mission because it would suit your case, because you are filing for a lawsuit which might end up with financial gains for you?
All right, if this was about financial gain, I would not be here in Kosovo. I would not be speaking to you and all the other journalists, because every time I speak, my lawyers have instructed me not to speak. It damages my case. But my case is not about winning or losing or money. It would be nice if I get some, but it's not about that. My case is about justice. My case is about exposing the wrongs that are occurring here in Kosovo and possibly in other missions around the world. My case is about making international institutions legally accountable. There have been a whole host of cases involving the UN where staff have reported the most horrendous issues, rapes of young children, trafficking in women, the Bulacevic whistleblower in Bosnia, and their lives have been made hell.
But as you know, you guys that come and are part of international missions, guys and girls, have immunity. Local prosecution cannot go after you. You have prosecution immunity.
Yeah.
How should the locals actually, or local courts or prosecution or local justice institutions go after people like that?
Well, there is immunity, and people's immunity when we're talking about the United Nations and other organizations has to be officially lifted on really good grounds.
Are you ready? Do you know that in order to even question you regarding these two cases that Tola and EULEX have posed with the local institutions, they need to lift your immunity. The local head prosecution has told me...
We have no immunity.
You have immunity.
I have
He cannot question you. No prosecutor, it's a she actually, cannot question you without lifting your immunity.
Nobody in EULEX has got immunity, including myself, Muci, Yaroslava and others, because the UN, when granting immunity, has to grant immunity by agreement, legal international agreement. That was what was done with K4. That was done with the Human Rights Review Panel. There had to be an agreement. The UN gave EULEX immunity by administrative direction. That immunity doesn't stand. But I understand that
but there is an agreement between Kosovo government and EULEX that for anything that you need to investigate EULEX, former officials or current, you need the mission or Brussels or their governments to lift the immunity.
Yes.
So now you cannot be investigated or cleared from an investigation without having your immunity lifted. That's why a request was sent to Brussels to lift your immunity.
Absolutely. I understand that agreement. I am here. I am willing to cooperate with any investigation.
Would you accept to be questioned by a Kosovo local prosecutor?
Absolutely. We've got very good prosecutors in Kosovo, so I have no...
Really? Even as a suspect, not as a witness?
Even as a suspect.
Do you think they need to wait for your immunity to be lifted?
No, I don't, because personally, I don't think I've got immunity, but if they feel that they have to go through this, then so be it.
I've
but I'm
contacted-
here and
yes.
ready to be interviewed by anybody.
I've contacted two sources before talking to you. Crown prosecution, the prosecution, head of prosecution in Pristina doesn't want to interview you without the immunity being lifted, while the British Embassy, on the other hand, doesn't feel like there is a need since you've been transparent and you can be asked, like you just said.
Absolutely. This is what I'm fighting for. I am fighting for open, transparent justice. And I will be open and transparent in anything that is asked of me. I have nothing to hide. I've committed no offences. They tried to say that I damaged the Francesco Flora investigation. They asked Heike Wendoff and he said no. And I spoke predominantly about that investigation.
Since you say you are transparent and open to us, I'm actually going to put some questions to you on what has been said about you since a year since I had you on the program.
Okay.
There's been publications about you, there's been statements about you, and I want to address these with you. I'm glad you're here to do that.
Okay.
There's one particular, now there's a person who has written a book critical about EULEX, Andrea Kapussellës.
Yeah.
Almost as critical as you are about the mission, but nevertheless, he has put you quite in the spot by saying that you were reluctant to investigate two ministers that were involved in a big case that happened at that time. It has to do with American University of Kosovë land that was being given to them by Ahmet Shola and Enver Hoxha.
Yeah.
This is what Andrea Kapussellës was testifying, information that he gave you because Andrea Kapussellës was member of Kosovë Privatization Agency. I'm just trying to remind the audience of what were the details of the cases.
Okay,
he said that he gave these documents to you, but you were unwilling to chase our ministers.
No, that is absolutely incorrect because he didn't give those documents to me. He gave those documents many years ago to Miss Isabel Arnell. There was a review of those documents which said at the time this case should and must be properly investigated, and there are grounds for that investigation. I was told that he had sent those papers into SPRK, and I searched and searched and searched for many weeks trying to find those papers. I eventually found them sitting outside Mr. Rattel's office, and no one had looked at those papers since Isabel Arnell left. So I took those papers.
When was the time you took those papers?
I don't remember the dates, but I did take them. It wasn't long before I was suspended, but I did take the papers. I read them. I thought this case has to be investigated, and I made several phone calls to Mr. Kapussellës. I was unable to contact him on a number of occasions.
Oh, he's very contactable. He's all over the Kosovo media.
Yeah, but when I was phoning him, he was either in the theatre or somewhere else and promised to call me back. Eventually, we had a conversation and he told me about the involvement of these two ministers. I opened the case again and I started to investigate. I didn't get to the stage of investigating any ministers because by that time I had been ousted.
But there was a case that you had already filed something like a ruling against the legal officer who had signed off that land on the name of privatization agency. So you did a ruling.
Yes, I did. I did a ruling.
So you found enough evidence to do a ruling
Absolutely.
Against a legal officer in privatization agency, but you didn't bring that higher up to people like that that in the public were known for ordering that legal officer. Dino Hassanaj, who killed himself later, Minister of Finance, Minister of Education, which Kapussellës says gave you all how high political level was involved in giving away this land.
Absolutely, but when I do a ruling, I have to have evidence to substantiate that ruling. I had enough evidence against the people against whom I issued the ruling. But when you start a case, the cases tend to mushroom. Then you find more evidence against more suspects and you add them in. And I issued the ruling on the basis of what I had at that time. Now, Mr. Kapussellës...
But who's the boss of the one who signed that paper?
Yeah.
You didn't go for what we would say legally command responsibility.
Yeah,
Why didn't you go that far?
Because I didn't have the details. Mr. Kapussellës talking about the ministers, but I didn't have the evidence. He should have given me evidence if he has that.
But they are the bosses. They are directly the bosses of the person you charged.
Yeah. Just because someone is your boss
Yes.
doesn't mean they're involved in your illegal act.
No?
No,
But
not
you
at all.
suspect them and then you can release them. It does
No,
mean
no, no,
a
no.
very high
You have-
public land next to international village built by Dino Hasanaj is really quite, you know, there's a lot of evidence there already. Suspicion.
Suspicion.
Yes.
But you need grounded suspicion, not just suspicion. That does not mean I wasn't investigating it. I was, but I
But
needed
there's no
facts.
evidence now that you left behind that you were investigating Ahmed Shala. Was there any evidence?
Oh, yes, there was. The
Yes.
whole point of wanting to speak to Blatza was because of Ahmed Shala and others who were involved in the privatization process. And I was given a lot of information that he knew what was going on. And that is why I wanted to speak to him. And it wasn't just this case of Mr. Kapussellës. I had about 9 or 10, even more, dodgy privatizations to
Why
deal
didn't
with.
you go through with them then?
Because I had started opening them just before I left.
But why did you leave it so late would be the obvious question.
Because they weren't allocated to me. They were not allocated to me.
But you allocated them to yourself. When you wanted to get them, you did get them.
Yeah. After I had found out from a colleague about these cases, I started nosing around because they weren't with me. And I found Kapussellës' case. Then I found evidence in a number of other cases that I wanted to look into.
We wrote in our investigations in Gazeta Jeta Kosovë, we wrote a lot about all the rules that had been broken in privatization of the amortization factory.
Absolutely, yeah.
So where did that go?
That was lying on somebody's desk for 2 years. This is international justice for you. I don't...
But your desk too. They
No.
was lying on your desk.
No.
You didn't issue a ruling about that.
No, I didn't issue a ruling about
Yes.
that because if you remember correctly, and this is a fact, it was nearly 1 month before I was suspended that I did the search on the privatization agency. In order to do that, I had to gather facts. I only got the privatization cases shortly before I was suspended, and some people have been suggesting that that was somehow connected with my suspension. I don't know. But I only got those cases, and you will check the dates on the rulings.
Yes, it's all March 2014. While these cases were happening, 2011, 12, 13.
Because they
the question of many Kosovars is what on earth was EULEX, including you, as head of financial unit then, doing for 3 years?
I was head of financial unit, but Rattel and the people before him allocated the cases. And
Why
part of my
didn't you know
cases,
about allocation of units as head financial unit? Why didn't you know?
because I never got them to he would allocate to me, and part of my claim in England is about a number of cases which should have come to me that didn't come to me. Now, the Amortizatorëve case
factory
was being dealt with initially by a German prosecutor, and I actually went to them and said, please, can I have this case? And that was shortly before I left. I only started to gather those cases because they were not given to me. They were not classified as financial crime. They were classified as organized crime. And nothing had happened to Amortizatorëve for many years. It was sitting within SPRK with no action taken. The other difficulty that SPRK had, and the reason I'm shocked that that case was eventually dismissed, because there were thousands of breaches in that case, and the prosecutors don't have access to experts. I was one person. Let me just explain. I've got emails where I wrote to Jonathan Rattel. I told him how big these cases were and how I needed experts on these cases. He ignored me. I then sent a long and detailed memo, and I had a meeting with Mats Mattisson to get some expertise to help us with these investigations and to start a local task force. That fell on deaf ears too. So I was left with mammoth cases, which I had taken myself. I had gone and taken them to try and do something with them. And I ended up with no help, no support, nothing.
Okay, but can we end this Andrea Kapussellës criticism in which, by just challenge you with one more quote? He told me that when he expressed his criticism about why you didn't go for big fish, in the exchange of emails you two had, you had threatened him, don't talk like that to me, I am the one who decides, I'm the prosecution, and be careful what you say to me because I am known as a woman who can sue.
Yes, and I do, because he was threatening to defame me at that point, if you look at the conversations, because I was the one who took the case, who tried to do something about it, and he was complaining I hadn't done it. The case had been there for God knows how long, and no one had touched it. It was me who went and found it.
But the history of you suing people, you had a lawsuit with Crown Prosecution Service before you came to Kosovo. What was that lawsuit about?
About
and how did it end?
discrimination. It was about discrimination. I won, and I got substantial damages.
Did you go to court?
Yes.
And you got substantial damages?
Yeah.
How much?
At the end of the day, I am subject to a confidentiality agreement. I can't discuss how much, but it was a substantial amount.
So what do you say to those, again, who point out, look, the history shows you're after money. You want to sue to get money.
No. The history does not show that. The history shows that I do not tolerate injustice. That's what the history shows.
But there's an injustice in every single job you get? There's
there
injustice?
was, if I see injustice,
Crown
there was.
Prosecution Service injustice, EULEX injustice, British government injustice, because you're suing British government right now, right?
There is injustice because I won. Crown Prosecution Service, I won. The Court of Britain...
They settled. They told me that they settled. They settled?
They settled the second case, the first case, and I've got the decision. I won.
Are you allowed to work in UK as prosecutor?
Absolutely.
Why aren't you working now as prosecutor?
I'm not working because my name's all over the internet.
What does that mean?
Because I'm not getting references from EULEX for my work that I've done. That's why I'm not working. But going back to your point about justice, the court found that the Crown Prosecution Service's actions were worse, were not of the standard expected for a large organisation, and they were lower than a corner shop. That is in the decision of the court. The court also found that there was discrimination, not just direct discrimination against me, but indirect discrimination against women and people of minority ethnic backgrounds.
Where are we now? Who are you suing now? What's happening with this, with your case? And what are the obstacles you're seeing on your case right now?
Well, I've got a very, very good case, according to my lawyers. I am suing the EULEX and the British FCO for not protecting me from EULEX.
How are you justifying that? What do you expect they should have done for you that they didn't?
They should have been more involved. When the UK law requires, whistleblowers to be protected. And once they knew, which they did, that I had complained of corruption within EULEX, they should have been more proactive to ensure that I was not then subsequently victimized by the person I'd complained about, namely Yaroslava Novotná.
But nevertheless, through the freedom of information rights you have, I have gotten access to documents which say that at the time, the British ambassador in Kosovo said that EULEX was clearly disappointed. He reported back to his headquarters that EULEX was clearly disappointed that I did not immediately condemn Maria Bamieh and all her works. I said we supported the investigation and were concerned about the impact this was having. He also highlighted how you will return for a few days to pack up and you would be available for investigation. So clearly it wasn't like the British government necessarily just said, oh, it's Maria's fault.
No, absolutely. Nor could they. The British government have gone further than that and said that Mucci was begging for me to be prosecuted by the British. He had a meeting with the ambassador, that's the one you've just read out, where the ambassador refused to condemn me. There was another meeting in Brussels where they were trying to get the British to prosecute me. And in that meeting, they said they got the distinct impression that it was a case of Maria's guilty until proven innocent.
And this is, may I quote from this document from the Foreign Office, saying that in the case of Maria Bamieh, I got the sense that Maria Bamieh's case is guilty until proven innocent, with no avowed duty of care, language, or consideration of her own welfare. So why are you suing a government which did not quite abandon you, like you said?
Well, there is a difference between failing to be proactive and sitting on the fence when I needed their help and support during my employment, and then afterwards saying, well, I think, you know, EULEX are being a bit unfair here, blah, blah, blah.
Were the Italians protecting their own better? Because Florit was being investigated. What was their government doing?
Yes, they were. With Mr. Florit, I have the emails. What happened was after Hansel Harbour left, Alexis Hoopen and Gentilini.
All these are diplomats, you're mentioning high-level diplomats sitting in Brussels who oversee EULEX.
Yeah, and they were most annoyed that this investigation was going on. They put obstacles, number of obstacles against...
Such as?
I have a huge list. That the mission should not cooperate with local authorities. The OR plan doesn't allow the mission to establish a task force to investigate Florit. That the mission should now give the investigation very low priority.
Maria, could it be that the British government did not help you so much because you only started publicly pushing these issues when you were leaving your job?
That is not
before.
true. Of course I didn't publicly publish this before I was leaving because I was hoping to deal with it internally.
But you didn't tell the British government you're being prosecuted and you being stopped from investigations way before you lost your contract.
Oh yes, I did.
Is there proof of this, that you're really going into this much detail?
There is an email.
Yes.
I had a meeting with the deputy ambassador.
Yes, where you said what?
Where I was complaining because Yaroslava's treatment of me and the parking investigation, and I have an email that they couldn't get involved.
But there is a different thing saying parking issue and Yaroslava's been treating you one way, to what you're claiming today, that you were investigating corruption and you were stopped because of the kind of investigations you're doing. This is an entire new level of information we have now.
because at that meeting I had the binder files of the corruption. I went and I took those to Jonathan Welford Carroll, who was our contingent leader. He read through the interceptions and told me, Maria, turn a blind eye. Don't do anything about this.
Who told you that?
Jonathan Welford Carroll.
Position was his position?
He was the national contingent leader.
Sorry, explain to us. What does a national contingent mean? Where does he sit? He sits in British Embassy, in KFOR? Where? What sort of?
He's a EULEX official who's elected.
Yes.
To deal with...
of which nationality?
British people who are seconded here. He's British. There's not sufficient here. Turn a blind eye. I then went to my line manager and she said, no, you have to report this. And then I made a report. I then went to the UK in 2013 and I spoke to the person who was in charge of the Kosovo desk. I made a full report about my suspicions, my complaints.
Which month we're talking about? When you left, right?
No, before. In 2013, leaving. I left in
2013, you reported to Foreign Office Kosovo desk.
Yes, in London. I attended a meeting there at Admiralty House, spoke to the head of the Kosovo desk. I explained about Francesco Florit, about Yaroslava, about all the problems that I was having as a result of having made a complaint of corruption.
Apart from suing British government, what will you do with EULEX, actually, who you think have treated you unfairly? How will you sue EULEX?
I sue EULEX as they're my secondary employer.
Where? In Brussels? In Kosovo? In London?
In London, because London has got jurisdiction.
And EULEX has wanted to keep this trial, this labor case trial, secret, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
What happened? How did they make that
request?
Request? And
they made
how
two applications.
Have they been?
They made two applications. The first one was dismissed, and there was a further application made by way of appeal against the first one. And in the course of making those applications, they threatened me with prosecution.
But do you understand that it could have been, just look at the other side's argument, that because you talk about cases while you're giving evidence, you are revealing investigations which may be harmed today, Maria. What if this is an argument?
It's a fallacious argument, because the only two investigations I talk about are the Tola investigation and the Sekiracha investigation, the Clinton bombing.
But you might speak about the privatization cases we just spoke, who you say might have also contributed to pushing you out.
They might have done. This is rumor that I've been told, that because I was touching now on big issues in Kosovo, that had a role to play. But I firmly believe the role was because of this complaint, because I've got the documents to support that was the reason why I've been treated the way I have. That is the reason why Miucci has been begging of all and sundry for 2 years to get me prosecuted. He's tried to get Mats to prosecute me, tried to get the British government to prosecute me. His lawyers sent letters to my lawyers threatening them with prosecution, which I have here. And then...
But you are good also at threatening others with the prosecution as well,
absolutely,
with lawyers.
Absolutely. Listen, this is about justice. This is about fighting to make international institutions legally accountable. And yes, maybe it was their misfortune that they picked on someone who doesn't cow down. And I will not cow down. I will see this through to the end.
Maria Bamieh, thank you for being on Jeta Kosovë, and I hope you can come back to Kosovo as much as possible.
I fully intend to.
Kjo ishte Maria Bamieh, ish-prokurorja e EULEX-it, e cila tash është në gjykim në Londër. Faleminderit.
Pas kësaj interviste ne I kemi kontaktuar edhe EULEX-in, Francesco Floritin dhe familjen Tolaj për të kërkuar anën e tyre pasi ka përmendur Bamieh. Nga EULEX, po ashtu kemi kërkuar shpjegimin për rastin e AKP-së, hetimeve të përmendura ndaj ish-ministrave të qeverisë që I ka përmendur Maria Bamieh. Mes tjerash, kjo është njëra nga përgjigjet që na ka dërguar EULEX-i. Misioni dëshiron të theksoj se nuk mund të jap komente për rastet që janë duke u hetuar. Hetimet penale janë diskrete për nga natyra e tyre. Kjo është një gjë konsistente për nga praktika e standardeve gjyqësore. Është e rëndësishme të ruhet konfidencialiteti gjyqësor për arsye qendrore, për ta garantuar prezumimin e pavajsisë, për ta mbrojtur pavarësinë gjyqësore dhe për të siguruar mbledhjen e dëshmive nga prokuroria pa ndonjë ndërhyrje. Minimi I konfidencialitetit në një rast në vazhdim apo që është duke u hetuar nuk I shërben interesit të dikujt e lëre më qytetarët të Kosovës. Ishte kjo përgjigja e EULEX-it, ndërsa kur e kontaktuam Francesco Florit, I shefin e Asamblesë së Gjyqtarëve të EULEX-it, që e ka akuzuar për korrupsion Maria Bamieh, ai na ka dhënë këtë deklarat. Raporti I zhakës që ka dalë pas kësaj afere e ka bërë të qartë se nuk ka kurfar fakte në akuzat e Maria Bamieh ndaj meje, të cilat ajo po vazhdon t'i përsërisë nëpër media pa kurfar argumentesh. Sipas Florit, ai është I gatshëm për të ofruar më shumë informacione dhe bashkëpunim me organet të drejtësisë në çfarëdo hetimi të ardhshëm me këtë çështje. Shikuesnderuare, ishte kjo e tëra për emisionin e sonte Jeta në Kosovë. Natyrisht ju mund të shkruani dhe të raportoni në kallzo.com. Deri të ajën të nashme, nga unë Muhamet Erlla, natën e mirë dhe mirëmbëjtje.